listeners, you have tuned in to the PODical Son Podcast. Very happy to have very first guest. This man is a product of Coffeyville, Kansas. Has been preaching for 48 years. Pastor since July 1st, 1977. Married to the wonderful, lovely Miss Karen E. Stewart. 5 sons, 2 daughters, 13 grandchildren, 6 degrees, 5 and 1 honorary. He was the AZ Republic, one of 10 most influential religious leaders of Arizona. The Arizona Daily Star from Tucson listing as a living legend, and the Calvin C. Good Lifetime Achievement Award. I welcome you, Reverend Dr. Warren H. Stewart. All right, so in regards to Coffeyville, Kansas, we spoke a little bit about that. Population as of 2024 is 8752. Moving from Coffeyville, Kansas, where was your next place of residence?
I went to Dallas, Texas. I went to Bishop College.
Yes,
The famed former is now defunct, unfortunately, but the famed Bishop College was noted for producing Black Baptist preachers of excellence. And I was recommended there by a bishop graduate, the late Dr. Manuel L. Scott Sr. And I could not go as a freshman because I couldn't afford it. But after I graduated from community college, I drove down to Bishop, 372 miles due south of Coffeyville, and that was transformative for my life because that was the first time I'd ever been in a environment where everything was predominantly black. You know, it was a HBCU, so the administration was black, the staff was black, most of the professors were black, most of the students were black, and so it helped me to understand who I was as a black person, and tremendously. Like I said, I went to integrated schools all my life, but I was even in integrated schools in Kansas. You were told indirectly or directly that you're black and you're second class. Okay. At Bishop, I didn't have to deal with that. Right. All I could do was soar like an eagle and excel because everybody around me looked like me.
Amen. So leaving Bishop College, where was your next school?
I went to Union Theological Seminary in New York City, which is one of the top seminaries in the world. Mm-hmm. Many great professors were there. Dr. James Howell Cone, the father of black theology. Samuel Terran, one of the great Old Testament scholars who was the general editor for the Interpreter's Bible Commentary. It was just one of the best seminaries in the country, in the world at the time.
Okay. And going from New York, it looks like you transitioned all the way to West Berkeley, California at the American Baptist Seminary?
Not directly, no. Okay. I came from, I stayed at Union and did 2 masters.
Okay.
Master of Divinity, which is 3 years, right. Master of Sacred Theology, which is 1 year, and then I was called the First Institutional Baptist Church. So that was in 1977. And then American Baptist Seminary of the West in Berkeley started a doctoral program, doctoral ministry, led by the late Dr. Henry H. Mitchell, who was a legend when it comes to the black church and black church history and theology and black preaching. And so he started a D-Min program for black pastors. So I started that in 1978, I believe, 78, 79, and graduated in 1982 with my doctorate.
So how did you end up in Phoenix, Arizona?
Well, one, I was a young seminarian and knew I'd been called to pastor. You know, God, that's my calling. I toyed with being a professor at one time, but even my professor said, "No, Warren, you are a churchman. You need to be in the church, not in the ivory tower of higher institutions like a seminary." So I wanted to get a church in New York, and I was up for a little church in the Bronx called Gethsemane Baptist Church. I wanted that church so bad. I'm so glad now the Lord didn't let me get that church because I'd probably still be in the Bronx in that little church. But so I got offers, and the first time I got an offer from First Institution, I got an application. I was recommended by one of my professors at Union. I threw it in the trash. I said, "Ain't no black people in Phoenix."
Right.
And so I said, "I want to go to Phoenix."
Right.
And so the chairman of the pulpit committee called my professor a few weeks later and said, said, we haven't gotten the application from Reverend Stewart. And so he called, he said, Warren, they said I said, oh man, I lost that application. I stretched the truth. I said, I lost that application. I said, have them send me another one. And they sent me another. I filled it out because of him. And God fixed it so I became the pastor. I was elected pastor in March 1977, started July 1, 1977. First and only church, 25 years old.
Wow. So prior to you being the pastor there, was there a congregation there at that time?
Oh, yes. First Institutional Baptist Church is the oldest Black Baptist church in the Valley of the Sun. It was started in 1905. It was first known as the Second Baptist Church.
Okay.
Because there was a First Baptist Church that was white. Then it became the first colored Baptist church, probably, a few years later. But then in the 1940s, the pastor who came there, he got the church to change the name to the First Institutional Baptist Church. And the reason he changed it is he said institution represents a church open to everybody.
Right.
And so probably since the 1940s, it's been called First Institutional Baptist Church.
So let me ask you this. What moment in your life most profoundly shaped your faith and commitment to social justice? I'm asking you on the back of there not being a lot of black people in Arizona, as you spoke of, and in Phoenix, and also this being one of the first black churches in Phoenix, Arizona. What shaped your faith and commitment?
Well, and you said specifically to social justice. I would have to say Martin Luther King Jr. I remember as an 11-year-old boy sitting in my grandparents' front room, August 1963, watching Martin Luther King on a black and white TV give that great I Have a Dream message. And when he talked about my 4 little children, I mean, he included me.
Right.
And, I dreamed that one day little black children and we'll be able to join hands together with white children. So I think there, I don't think I understood that I was going to be a social justice preacher, but there that he included me. Then the next thing that was profound, when I was in high school, I never forget, I was riding down one of our main streets in downtown Coffeyville, and a bulletin came on the radio. I was driving my grandparents' 1964 Studebaker Lark, and a bulletin came, they have murdered Dr. Martin Luther King. And I balled up my fist, and I just, out of reaction, hit the dashboard and kind of broke the dashboard on my grandparents' car. And I rolled down the window to find the first black person walking down the street downtown. I hollered out, I said, they killed Dr. King. And so so those 2 incidents probably planted the seed in me that as a black Baptist, well, at that time I hadn't started preaching, but as a black Baptist or a young black boy, teenager, that Dr. King represented God, he represented justice, he represented fairness and equality. And so, I think that shaped me on social justice. And then my grandfather, he was a chef by trade, but he was a leader in the community. He ran for the Board of Education back in the 1950s when black people didn't run for office.
Right.
So he was a leader in the Masonic Lodge, and he was a leader in the church, and I saw him stand up for justice. So between Martin King and then watching my grandfather, my maternal grandfather,
So this led to some of your activity, and I, for those that don't know, I've known Pastor Stewart for a very long time. He's been very close friends with my father, and in between us moving here and today, you were very implemental in the actual becoming of Martin Luther King Day. Can you kind of take us into the steps and what actually happened?
Yeah, sure. Well, there were 2 or 3 black legislators always in the Arizona State Legislature who even right after Dr. King was assassinated in 1968, tried to make a king holiday for Arizona, but they always failed. I mean, they couldn't get enough votes. And then in leading up to 1986, Stevie Wonder, Mrs. Coretta Scott King, and others were able to convince the Congress to pass a federal holiday honoring Dr. King on the third Monday in January. And that happened in 1986, and even the Republican president, Ronald Reagan, signed the bill. So we thought that since Reagan, a Republican, and the state legislature was controlled by Republicans, since Reagan signed it as a federal holiday, that the Republicans here in the state of Arizona would do it. They thought the King holiday was a black holiday, that it was just for black people. And since at that time in Arizona, there were only 3.5% black people, 4%. So they said, why do you want a black holiday and there's not that many of you in here? And so the whole campaign to win a King holiday here in Arizona was what I call, we had to educate, enlighten, and inspire people. We had to educate people that it was not a black holiday. It was an American holiday. Right. And the message I told to people all over this state was, there's what George Washington was to this nation in the 18th century by leading the Revolutionary War and us becoming a nation. What Abraham Lincoln was in the 19th century by leading during the Civil War, freeing the slaves and winning the war. That's what Dr. King was in the 20th century, because he was a revolutionary of nonviolence who tried to get this country to practice what it preaches in the Constitution and the Bill of Rights and the preamble, that, all people are created equal and we have these inalienable rights, etc. Well, even though those were great words written in the Constitution, the preambles, stuff like that, they were only for white men.
Right.
They weren't even for white women.
Right.
And so Martin King led a revolution in this nation in the 20th century and got us to it. And under his leadership, they passed the Civil Rights Act of 64. They passed the Voting Rights Acts of 65. So under his leadership, this country began to practice what it preaches. And so that's what we had to convince people. And it took us from 1986 to 1992 to finally convince Arizonans that the King holiday was not a black holiday. It was an American holiday. Right. And thank God we were successful. November 2nd, 1992, it was passed by an overwhelming majority of the voters. And most of those voters were white.
Right.
Yeah.
Whew, okay, that's powerful right there. I do remember a lot of your struggle. I also remember, I believe it was 1988. I think you just told me that Jesse Jackson actually came to speak at First Institutional. Yeah. Talk to us a little bit about that.
Well, Jesse Jackson was a disciple. Mm-hmm. He was mentored by Martin Luther King Jr. Right, he was there on the balcony when Dr. King was assassinated. Right. So my pastor in New York City at the Cornerstone Church, where I attended church when I was in seminary, was Dr. Sandy F. Ray. Okay. Dr. Sandy F. Ray was the roommate at Morehouse College of Martin Luther King Jr. Sr., okay, Martin King's dad. So Martin King Jr. called my pastor Uncle Sandy. Okay. So my pastor who mentored me also mentored Martin Luther King Jr. Mm-hmm. And so Dr. Ray, knowing all of King's disciples, Jesse Jackson called Dr. Ray Uncle Sandy. And so anybody who was anybody in the church world, in the civil rights world, would preach at Cornerstone, because my pastor was just that legendary, and he was just a great man. And so one day, Jesse Jackson was in town and came to preach for Uncle Sandy at Cornerstone. And I met him there, and Dr. Ray had me to take him up to the office to get ready, for him to preach. And then, and I never will forget, he said, yeah, Uncle Sandy said you can preach, boy.
Right.
Yeah. And so, I mean, it was an honor that my pastor would share with other great leaders that this young man is up and coming.
Right.
I was just in my 20s. And so that's where we met. And I think a year later, I was in Chicago, and I went by Operation Push in Chicago, and he remembered me. And then I eventually was called to First Institutional. And whenever he would come to town, he would always call me up. And so he was running for president, and I supported him. And he preached for us, and we had a packed house one Sunday. Yeah.
Wow. Again, powerful. I do remember a little bit about that sermon, but I think more than anything, it was the fact that from my young self, just seeing him come to you, it kind of uplifted who you were.
Oh, thank you.
Just knowing, just knowing you were a friend of my father's. It just, you are to Arizona what Martin Luther King was to America, and very blessed to know you. Very blessed to know you personally. Very thankful for that. Moving on to now, what has been the most difficult of ethical decisions you faced as a faith leader, and how do you navigate through them? Coming up to your 48th year, coming up to your retirement, how do you navigate through those things?
Well, certainly with much prayer and with faith in the Lord, having one or two trusted counselors who can give me advice. And I just shared this at the IC3 Church Growth Conference in Houston, Texas, which is one of the premier black church conferences in the nation right now under Dr. Ralph Douglas West at the Church Without Walls in Houston. He asked me to do story time, and story time is similar to what we're doing today in this podcast, just telling your story. Right. And I'm a very transparent guy. What you see is what you get. And I shared with them, and I shared with you, and all of you who are watching this podcast, I share with you. 30 years ago, I had a difficult marital situation. I went through a separation and a divorce. So the thing I said at the IC3 conference was that I went through a very private marital problem publicly. And I had to navigate that. That was like 1993 through 96 and 7. That was right after we had won the King Holiday. So I was the most popular black person in the whole state of Arizona. And I mean, we were having these marital problems during the holiday, but we were able to keep them down. But they kind of surfaced, and so I had to navigate that at a very private family matter, publicly.
Right.
And of course, I think I became the bad guy. I became the bad guy, and it is what it is. Right. You know, I mean, people left the church, people called me a hypocrite, etc. You know, but I had close confidants who helped me to navigate through that, and one was your father. James L. Harris Jr.
Yes, sir.
If it had not been for your father, he and two other pastors, we call ourselves the Brethren, the late Pastor James N. Preston,
yes, sir.
Currently Pastor Benjamin N. Thomas Sr. We would all go to an IHOP, 51st Avenue and I-10, and they would let me cry, they would let me cuss, they would let me confess, they would let me just talk.
Right.
And they helped me through that time. Because if it had not been for them, I would have probably quit, resigned, lost it, left town or something like that.
Oh, my goodness.
Yeah.
Well, we're definitely glad that you had your brothers with you. Definitely glad that you had the mental fortitude and the historical encouragement from your grandfather,
Yeah.
from Sandy F. Ray, from um, the moments that you went through in your life, and I'm pretty sure you've seen other ministers of higher prestige go through certain things
Sure.
and then fall by the wayside.
Yeah.
And then you've also
Yeah.
seen the same issue where people actually grew
Yeah.
from that
Sure.
point.
Certainly.
Great to see that you have kept it going. A lot of people that left. Forget them because they probably had situations as well.
For whatever reason they left, God bless them. I mean, if you can't handle that I'm a human being,
Right.
Even though I'm a person God has called to preach and lead people, if you can't handle that I have human frailties, that I'm very sorry about, I never boasted about. I tell people this day, divorce is a failure. I don't care if you got legitimate biblical reasons for it, and but divorce is a failure. And
Right.
and the thing I told them at the IC3 conference in April, and I say to those who are listening, my family and I are still paying the price for that family challenge, that family breakup. It's never over.
Right.
Even though all my children are adults.
Right.
It's Anyway.
Yeah. Let's talk to you a little bit about these wonderful children of yours. I actually grew up with them.
Yeah.
I remember certain Sundays staying the night there and going to church and just enjoying. I was telling my wife yesterday, actually, you were probably the first family that I had here in Arizona.
Okay.
I think I'm probably the most family person out of my family.
Okay.
Loved my family in Chicago. We always got to go back and forth to Denver and see my mother's side.
Right.
And when we left Chicago to Phoenix, we were just all by ourselves.
Yeah.
It was me, my mother, and my father. This is before my sisters were born.
Okay, sure.
So you were like the first family. You're an uncle.
Yeah,
And Sonny and Matthew and Jared were born at that time, and then
Right.
the other three came after that. But family to
Sure.
me. So let's talk to them about your successes. Sonny, Matthew, Jared, Justin, Aaron, and two daughters, Jamila and Jessica. Just tell us a little bit about these wonderful.
All of them have been called. But now, let me see how many who've accepted. Sonny is accepted. It's called Sonny, Matthew, Jared. Justin has yet to accept his call, but he's been called.
Right.
Aaron, Jamila actually went through my licentious class this year, 2025, but she said, Daddy, I'm not called to be a preacher in the reverend sense.
Mm-hmm.
And so I didn't license her, but she went through my licentious class.
Mm-hmm.
And then, of course, Jessica did, and we just ordained Jessica the 1st of June of this year. So they all have been called, and most of them are acting on their ministries. It's kind of in the genes. And when I did some historical research on my family, on my father's side, who did not rear me, but he was a Methodist, and he had his father and his father's brother, which is uncle. I found out they were Methodist preachers, black Methodist preachers from Ohio. So I didn't know until later. So there's preachers in my family on my father's side, but then, as I told you, on my mother's side, we didn't know anything but church. Yeah.
So, with your children, I guess you could give a better answer to this. What do you wish younger pastors or activists understood about sustaining the work of justice and ministry over the decades that you've been doing it?
Well, it requires faithfulness. It requires, one, you have to be called to the ministry of justice, and you don't have to be a preacher to do that, to be called to the ministry of justice. But whether preacher or not, you have to feel that this is part of God's purpose, why he created you,
right.
why he brought you in this world. The other thing is, in this whole King holiday fight, I learned some lessons. And one of the lessons I learned in being a leader is what I call leadership under fire.
Okay.
And what I tell people is you have to be a leader on fire. Means you have to have passion. You have to have a sense of calling. You have to have enthusiasm. So you got to be on fire in order to catch other people on fire, to follow you. Mm-hmm. But the other thing, you will become a leader under fire. Mm-hmm. All during that whole King holiday fight. And even as a pastor, as a leader in the community, people don't always understand why you do what you do.
Right.
Or why you make the statements you make, or why you take the stands you take. During the whole King holiday fight, the 6.5 years, I was thrust into the public in front of the media. I was on international media, national media, local media. And a lot of local people thought it was an ego trip for me. Mm-hmm. There's Stewart again in front of that television. No, that was not my goal, to be in front of the television.
Right.
But if I had to speak out against injustice and wrong done, whether for the King holiday or whether for apartheid in South Africa, or whether not getting decent streets and schools in South Phoenix, somebody has to speak up.
Right.
And I would speak up. And so then that draws media to you. So that's why I said you have to be a leader under fire, on fire with passion, but understand you will be under fire, because people won't always understand why you do what you do.
Right.
But you got to press forward.
Absolutely. Being under fire is one thing. As a pastor, as a church, I believe church has been under fire.
Oh, Lord, yes.
Especially with COVID.
Yes,
I think one of the biggest changes and shifts I've seen in the congregation has been the COVID disease and the outbreak, and how it eliminated a lot of ability for a pastor to deal with his church on a face-to-face basis.
Sure.
I know my dad uses this saying every now and then: people attend bedside Baptists.
Yeah.
And how have you been able to overcome a lot of the things that COVID has taken over?
Well, let me be very transparent again. COVID, the whole COVID pandemic, where they shut down the whole community, they shut down the state, shut down churches. I think I went through temporary depression. Not for a long time, but at least for a few weeks when it first started, because I'm a hands-on pastor. I touch people. I visit the sick. I go to the hospitals. I touch people's lives in the community. I couldn't do that, and I had a challenge dealing with it. Now, with that being said, James, let me share this. The church was in trouble before COVID. Many mainline, predominantly white denominations were already in decline. Now, I said, as I watched them in the 1980s and 1990s and early 2000s, I said, that'll never happen to the black church. Because black people are committed to the black church, and the black church gave birth to the civil rights movement, and Martin King and the NAACP and Fannie Lou Hamer and Rosa Parks and all that. But I've been proven wrong. So, because the black church is in decline. Now there are some here and there that are really exploding and doing well, and we thank God for them, and we can learn from them. But if you look at the black church as a whole, data shows we have lost the last two generations of young people. They have very little association with the organized church.
Absolutely.
So what COVID did, COVID compounded the decline that was already taking place. So you can't blame the current state of the church in 2025 all on COVID.
Right.
because it was in decline before COVID. As your dad said, I mean, I have members that I haven't seen since COVID, and some of them contribute regularly. I see them sometimes in the community. They say, "Oh, Pastor, I watch you every Sunday."
Right.
My wife and I, we get up and get our coffee and our orange juice, and we watch you every Sunday.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not that they don't feel a part of FIBC,
Right.
but they feel they don't need to come.
Right.
And so that's very difficult, because I don't believe there's a New Testament word called koinonia, which means fellowship. That the old folks said, that love that goes from heart to heart and breast to breast. I don't believe you can get a lot of koinonia fellowship over Zoom.
Right. Absolutely.
Watching on Facebook, on social media. I mean, yeah, you can see me preach, you can hear the choir, you can sit in your money, but there's only so much you can get not being in the atmosphere of where God shows up in amongst His people.
Right.
And so I've heard people say that the church will never be the same anymore. I want to try not to believe that.
Right.
I still have hope, even though I'm retiring. I have hope that even FIBC will again be full every Sunday.
Right.
And the next pastor will take us to the next level.
So besides your retirement and the next pastor, for churches and black churches all alike, what do you think has to take place for the congregation to step away from Zoom?
Well, at first I thought with Trump's election in 2016, and then again in 2016, I thought maybe with all the craziness that he's about, and the injustice, and I believe in my heart he's a racist. I thought that would drive people back, and it didn't. This time, he's really he's like Trump 2.0, and he's getting rid of black history in schools and all of the DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusive programs, and bringing back Confederate names to forts, and statues and stuff. So maybe people will see that the only independent voice that still exists in the United States is the black church, and the only independent mouthpiece is the black preacher.
Right.
So maybe that might draw and stir some people back. That's my prayer.
What do you think for the state of Arizona and the city of Phoenix needs to happen for that to turn? I spoke on a bigger stage, but for Phoenix, you were and are all that we have.
Well,
going into your retirement, what do you think needs to happen?
I hope some of these younger generation people will step up to the plate and speak up.
Do you feel confident?
I feel hopeful.
Okay.
I don't know that I'm confident, but I am working, and part of what I want to do in my retirement, and what I even have done over the years, is to pour into people's lives, like yourself, pour into your lives, to mentor you, to answer any questions you want to ask me, like you're asking in this podcast, to be able to share some of my experiences over the years, and to inspire you all to take the baton. I mean, all this year, our church is under a theme: our spiritual assignment, passing the Lord's baton generationally. And so, we are intentionally passing the Lord's baton to you younger generations, because our time is over.
Right.
And if we don't get the generations that we've lost, and your generation to take the leadership, decline what happened in the black church, black community, like it's happened in the white church, white community.
I'll say that with everything that happened as far as Martin Luther King and you banging on the dashboard and finding the nearest black person and telling them that Dr. King was assassinated, I felt a few years ago you actually had like a State of the Union service after a very good close friend of mine was killed in Phoenix, Arizona by the name of Romaine Brisbane.
Oh, yes.
This guy, he's like a brother to me.
Yeah.
One of my statements is remain, rule, remain. Your son actually did the service. I sang at the service, and that kind of felt like that moment.
Yes.
That kind of felt like that moment. But unfortunately, church, social media, that clash got real nasty. And I'll be honest with you, I'm about as hopeful as you are. I'm not confident,
okay.
you know, so
sure.
I will be leaning on you a little bit more outside of just a public space for assistance and just a thought, because it seems like we're more into likes and doing things that are sporadic and out of place than we are to lead and drive forward to make sure that something is actually happens other than something being viral,
right?
You know, and I really hope that we can continue to come to you, and you're being open.
Sure.
You and your wife
very much so.
are open.
As long as the Lord allows me, yes, sir.
Amen. So let's get off all that stuff. Let's. What does retirement look like for you?
R-E-S-T, rest. Rest. At least the first 6 months, I just want to rest. I've been working at the same job for 48 years, going to the same address. Right. And I say that with Thanksgiving. Right. I rejoice. I'm not upset about that. And I take my calling seriously. So a lot of people think that pastors just work on Sunday. Mm-hmm. No, I work. I used to work 7 days a week, but I had got some sense. And if God took a day off when He created the world, I need to take it off. So I work 6 days a week. But I'm a full-time pastor. I have been a full-time pastor, and so my schedule has not been mine by choice. And so after June 30th, I think my schedule will be mine by choice and by retirement. And I'm going to rest. I got a couple of books in my head I got to get out.
Okay.
And I want to start a foundation that deals with mentoring for servant leadership. So, and I haven't had time with my schedule to come up with the structure for that. So again, after I rest, I'm going to work on that nonprofit foundation for mentoring servant leadership, and I hope to get those couple of books out of my head.
Now, will you have to be a minister to go into this class, or
no? It is for anyone who wants to be. I mean, servant leadership is a role model of Jesus Christ, but I think Jimmy Carter was a servant leader. And there are many others in the civil rights movement. There may be a few servant leaders in the corporate structure. So no, it's not just for preachers. It's for anybody who wants to provide the kind of leadership that improves the lives of everyone else, not just themselves.
Right.
It's not self-focused. It's other-focused.
Right. Okay. So, as we get towards the close, I got a couple more questions, but one big one is, if you could write a letter to your 30-year-old self, what would you say?
Oh, well, yes, and I remember my 30s were a very difficult time. I went through, I don't think I went through depression then, but I certainly had a lot of stress. Mm-hmm. I would write to my 30-year-old self, said, look, Warren, God willing, you haven't lived half your life. So don't take everything so seriously. Seek others to join you to reach the goals that you have for yourself and you have for others. pace yourself.
Right.
Pace yourself. Find people in whom you can confide who hold you accountable. And look down the road and see where you want to be 10 years from now, 20 years from now, even where you want to be at retirement. And prepare now for that. The bottom line, I would say, chill, man. Just chill. Life happens. Just don't get bent out of shape. It's going to be all right. Stick with God. Keep him first. Seek ye first the kingdom of God. Amen. And all these things will be added to you.
Yes, sir.
That's what I would say.
Yes, sir. And I think this is, being a pastor's son, I've had a bird's eye view of what that life is like. So I'm pretty sure from your angles it's similar. Now is kind of the opportunity for you to be a husband.
Yes, sir. A grandfather. All my grandchildren, they're looking forward to Papa no longer being at the church 6 days a week.
Right.
So I can go to the games. I can go pick them up at school.
Right.
I can do all that stuff that I haven't been able to, that I haven't done. That's I haven't been able to do, but I haven't done. Yeah, and to be a husband, without a doubt. My wife told me I was going to be cooking.
There we go. Do you cook?
I can. I have in the past, but I haven't much since I've been married. But she said, because she's not retired.
Right.
She works for Wesley Theological Seminary and Hospice of the Valley. So she's not retired, at least not for 4 or 5 years.
Right.
So she told me I'm going to be cooking dinner.
Right. Wow. Okay. Last question. And if you could just look into the camera and give some people some words of encouragement from you as you depart from your pastoral title, but not you being a man.
This one?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. That camera right there.
Well, thank you so much for listening to this podcast. Thank you, James L. Harris III, for having me. This has been wonderful. Look, God has a purpose for your life. He created you for a purpose. And my prayer for you is that you are fulfilling that purpose, or you will fulfill that purpose. And he'll give you everything that you need to fulfill that purpose if you lean and depend on him. And look, I'm here for you. I'm rooting for you. And if you need some counsel, James knows how to get in touch with me. Blessings on you. Yes,
PODical Son Podcast, episode 1. We want to thank you for tuning in. God bless.